Hey there, how's it going everyone? Welcome to this week's astrological report for January 21st through January 27th of 2025. I hope everybody's doing well. This week we do have some pretty serious stuff going on, including today as the Sun in Aquarius is conjunct Pluto at the beginning of Aquarius. So that's talking about a big spotlight on power and control and transformation. Sets things off for this week ahead. Plus today the Moon has ingress Scorpio and is applying a square to that Pluto and the Sun. So Pluto is wrapped up in the Moon square Sun today, especially the second half of Tuesday, which is pretty much applying right now as I'm making this video. So the second half of Tuesday, a little bit critical, intense, and transformative, and kind of sets the tone for the rest of the week. So the Moon will be waning all through Scorpio, all through Sagittarius, and all through Capricorn for this report week. And again, today we start this last quarter moon phase, the crisis in consciousness phase, wrapped around transformation, surrendering, rebirth. A lot of deep, powerful changes are starting from this point forward. So I'll talk more about that. But we also have several major aspects this week. Mostly it looks like with Mercury and Venus, and also Mars is involved. So we have Mercury squaring Chiron. That took place earlier in the morning today, but it's in play all day today. Talk about that. And then, like I said, today we have the Sun conjunct Pluto. That happens once a year, but it's in this new era vibe of Pluto and Aquarius. Speaking about this new phase that we're coming into, that's very transformative. That's peaking today, like I said. Then we have this Mars. Mars will be sextile Uranus this whole week. And it'll be perfect here on January 23rd. So that's Thursday. And Thursday looks like the most interesting day out of this week. We also have some other stuff going on too later on this weekend. Sunday night looks interesting as well. But Thursday, I'm thinking might be the most interesting day, maybe the most beneficial day to be doing errands and mercurial things. There's a lot of trines and sextiles that day. But there's also a pretty rare alignment that's shaping up for Thursday, as not only will Mars be sextile Uranus from Cancer to Taurus, and I'll talk about the meaning of that. It's a beneficial aspect for everybody, but we also have Mercury opposing that Mars and Mercury trine that Uranus at the very same time. So that's pretty rare for all this to be aligning like it is here on Thursday. So Thursday looks significant for activity, but also everything mercurial, your thinking, your processing, information and communications. So overall, Mercury is kind of behind everything. All the major transits are ahead, and Mercury has to catch up because Mercury was in that retrograde for so long. So the mind, the thoughts are actually behind the focus and the drive and what's trying to move forward already. So our mind has to catch up with things this week as well. But it's still in a practical Capricorn business and plans, your future. So as this goes forward here, again, I think Thursday might be an opportunity day, but I'll take a closer look as I'm going through the transits day by day. But there's innovation here that's available for everybody. And then we also have Venus exalted in Pisces, building up the trine aspect to Mars this week as well, as Mars is backing up into the trine. So the lovers, Venus and Mars, they're in harmony this week. So that just speaks generally, and I'm talking very generally here, relationships are coming into a more harmony phase for a little bit. But it's water, so it's more emotionally based. It's more sensitive. And Mars is still a little bit of a wild card factor because it's debilitated, it's retrograde, but it does have this support and help from Uranus and then these other Pisces transit. So Mars has help this week, which can help us out when we're taking action. But still, relationship, there's a connection going on here for some people, especially if you have water and earth signs in your chart, planets in those signs around these degrees, the last 10 degrees of the signs. So we'll be taking a look at that. That's exact here on January 25. So that's Saturday. And then we have this Mercury sextile Neptune. And then we have Venus sextile that Neptune is, no, not Neptune, but Uranus. So Yeah, so both Venus and Mars are aspecting this Uranus in the financial side of the chart. So that's a benefit. That's something like an opportunity that's available. So I'll be taking a look at that and talk about the meaning of that as I'm going through this report. But it does look beneficial here, like I said, on late Sunday. Yeah, second half on Sunday. And then Mercury is also aligning in an easy way with the nodes of fate as well. So fateful communication, information, thoughts, and ideas by the end of this report week. Then we get to next Monday on January 27, and Mercury changes signs finally. Ingress is Aquarius, and then has to conjoin with Pluto next week. So there's going to be a big change by next week with our thoughts, our thinking, everything mercurial, news and information and media. It's going to get more and more intense as we get to next week. But Mercury will pass that pretty quickly. And again, be speeding up to catch up with everything else. So those are the main aspects this week. Overall, I mean, there's a lot of positive here. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of openings for support this week. And then there's like normal ups and downs, but there's a few challenges. And the challenges are especially today. You know, like I said, with this moon in Scorpio debilitated, squaring Pluto and the sun with this last quarter moon, second half of Monday is not exactly easy. And even yesterday, you know, even though it was an inauguration and this big new beginning, the vibes weren't exactly flowing all that great yesterday. But things will be changing. And again, once we get to Thursday, everything's going to start to flow a lot better here. Maybe a little bit tomorrow. We have 2 inconjunctions on Wednesday, but we do have 1 trine on Wednesdays, so that's beneficial. So it'll kind of turn into something better perhaps within a couple days. So those are all the major aspects. You can find it written out in the description below with timestamps and when everything comes exact. There's a link to my page if you want to buy a personalized report. And also, guys, if you have emailed me recently, I've been falling behind on my emails, you know, because I keep up with my business money emails mostly, and then I try to get to everything, but I do miss emails once in a while because I get a lot. So please understand that if I haven't gotten back to you, it's either it fell through the cracks or I'll be getting back to you soon. But if you've bought a report, then I'll always get back to you. So I just want to put that out there that I am running behind and I'll get caught up soon because I've been kind of sick the past week as well. All right, guys, so I'm going to go through this chart day by day, looking at all these aspects as I always do. So we start here on Tuesday, January 21st. So like I said, we had a change. Like when we first got up in the early morning, the moon was still in Libra, but the moon did change signs today into this Scorpio. So a mood change today, which typically is not as easy. The moon coming into Scorpio. Before I move forward, though, I want to back up and talk about some of the hostages that got released yesterday. I think that was yesterday or Sunday. Yeah, it was on the weekend, I believe, Sunday. So that was a positive as well. And that's because the moon was in Libra, ruled by that exalted Venus next to Saturn, these serious things. And this is a process that's going to be unfolding because Venus will be coming back to Saturn and stationed direct with Saturn by mid-April on the Libra full moon. So there's going to be this back and forth with Venus exalted in Pisces and Saturn, talking about serious things for the future that are now in development. And one of those things was this peace deal and the hostage deal. But now the moon here has changed signs for today. It's not as easy. The moon is no longer being ruled by this exalted Venus for the rest of the rest of Tuesday and the rest of Wednesday. Now, with the moon in Scorpio, the mood and the circumstances are being ruled by this Mars down here in Cancer. So it comes back to immigration. That's going to be a huge part of this Mars retrograde in Cancer, the homeland. From now all the way until the end of February, when Mars stations direct at 17 degrees of Cancer, it's backing up and just kind of staying within a few degrees of this area of Cancer, for the rest of this month and all of next month pretty much. And then it's going to move forward too, all through Cancer until we get to April into May, and then Mars moves forward. So this is talking about a major part of this new dynamic that we're coming into that's talking about major transformation with the sun conjunct Pluto, with the moon in Scorpio in the 8th house squaring Pluto. Lots of intense transformation is taking place. And now that the moon is in Scorpio, ruled by Mars, it does come back to a lot of immigration stuff that you're going to be seeing, with the United States and all that. That's going to be the main factor. But the fact is, Venus is building that trine, exalted Venus, building that trine to Mars, and Mars backing up into that sextile with Uranus. So it's not bad. It's a good thing, actually. And we can get the job done, actually, this week with this connection going on. Yes, it's still a Mars that's not exactly happy. It's still debilitated, but it has help from an exalted Venus and a Uranus that Venus is ruling. So again, we can make a lot of improvements this week with this Mars, and this next couple days is major deep transformation. Now, on the other hand, I did talk about last week how Tuesday looked pretty rough with this square to Pluto, and I talked about how there would be a topic about death. You may not be seeing it on the news just yet, but what happened here is there was this big ski resort fire in Turkey. So dozens of people killed, dozens injured. I think it's even still ongoing, so the numbers might change, but it was a pretty big event that happened. And again, no surprise with the moon coming into this type of position with the sun conjunct Pluto, which does deal with death and loss, but it's also symbolic for everybody in the world right now, in the United States, this new era that we're coming into. So this whole week is really the theme of transformation. So that can be literal, but it can also be this symbolic death and rebirth and this huge transformation that people are going through, the world, the United States especially, but even on personal levels, if this aligns with your personal chart, if you have personal planets at the beginning of the fixed signs, the beginning of Aquarius and Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. And if you do, of course, you're starting this once-in-a-lifetime Pluto transit for your personal planets in the beginning of the fixed signs. And now the main lights, the moon and sun, are wrapped around those. So again, it's the crisis in consciousness phase where we have to adapt to what's going on. We have to integrate all this stuff now. And that's what's going on here in the United States with all this big stuff moving forward, integrating, accepting. And it's also a challenge for some people because this is a battle between Scorpio and Aquarius. I've talked about this a lot in the past, how Aquarius is more about detaching from things, whereas Scorpio is about never forgetting things. Scorpio and Cancer, they just never forget wrongs, and they hold on emotionally to stuff very tightly sometimes, which is usually not for the good of the person, so it's best to release, to surrender things, to surrender and let go of old emotional attachments to certain ideas and thoughts and feelings of things. So it can be on a personal level for some people this week of what do you have to let go of on some level if this aligns with your chart. If it doesn't, then it might just be the background in the world and what's going on. But if it aligns with your chart, you're being asked to surrender and to detach a little more from things. So people that are holding on to political ideas or things that they're unhappy about, again, it's a challenge to surrender, to release certain things of the past. It can be on multiple levels, though. It can be on different levels for individuals, whatever they're emotionally attached to in unhealthy ways. But now that the moon is in Scorpio the next 2.5 days, again, it's at odds with where the main focus is. The sun in Aquarius, the group and the community and politics. And that's where, again, there's a need to detach from things, to be more intellectual and objective about things, and being challenged at the same time to surrender, to integrate, to let go, to become more whole in this phase. But we have to wrap our minds around certain ideas and thoughts about things, the crisis in consciousness, so we can be moving forward. So detachment versus attachment. And then again, death issues for some places around the world with intensity today and really intense political vibes here, and power and control is being highlighted. So that Mercury square is in place all day. It was, like I said, perfecting earlier in the morning. So there's some sensitivity here for some people with the mind and thoughts too, and communication and words. But it's not for everybody. It's only going to be if this aligns with your personal chart as well. So if you have any personal planets around 19 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then you might be aligned with this, because you're already under a rare Chiron transit to that 19 degree mark. So Mercury's highlighting it for some people. So that can be difficult thinking, wounding thinking. It's kind of an issue here because, again, Aries is about being brave and courageous, daring, starting things, going after things, doing things quickly. Mercury here in Capricorn is trying to think in a more methodical way, doing things slower, having a good plan. So some people might be running into some negative thoughts, with this the last 24 hours, or it could just be some other issues as well. But it is separating now. Mercury is coming into 20 degrees, so it's separating from that pretty quickly, but it is in place for most of Tuesday here. So now that the moon is in Scorpio and it's about to square Pluto and it's about to square the sun for the last aspect of the day. So this kind of sets the tone now for the rest of the day. The vibe you woke up with this morning is different from what we're coming into for the rest of Tuesday. So look, I'm just being real with you. It's not looking like the easiest day for some people here. But at the same time, the moon does move pretty quickly, and it's only going to be making this aspect until 12:30 on the west coast. So that's 3:30 on the east coast. Once we get to 12:30 here, there's no more aspects for the rest of the day. So again, it kind of sets the tone. Moon square sun, that crisis in consciousness, how we feel versus what we're focused on, are on two different pages, generally speaking here. And it's a little bit intense, a little bit critical for the rest of Tuesday. But we're going to move this forward. And like I said, things will be changing. It won't be this critical or this edgy for the whole week. I'm going to put this on the hour. Okay, and then we get to tomorrow on Wednesday, January 22nd. The moon is still waning through Scorpio, but now it's in a much better position because now it's going to come into harmony with all the Pisces transits and eventually the Mars as well. Moon in Scorpio also deals with markets and financial matters, loans, investments. All these things are going to be a part of the general circumstances for people. Talking about money and resources, and that's a part of what's coming into play this week as well. Looking at your financial life, looking ahead for this year, making decisions, and even making things happen with this Mars getting support. So it is a good week for action overall. But as we get to Wednesday here on January 22nd, the first aspect is the moon in conjunct to Jupiter. So the moon in Scorpio, kind of at odds with this Jupiter down here in Gemini. But this is really early in the morning, so that's going to be not a big deal for most of the day. But we have to make some adjustment between communications, information, the more social outward side versus this more private inward side. Because that's, as you know, that's a part of the Scorpio moon phase, is a more private phase, a more inward phase, controlling phase, trying to keep everything under control. Doesn't always work, especially maybe later on today. But as time goes on, it will smooth out. And again, there's only one major aspect for Wednesday, and that's this moon making a good solid trine to Saturn. This is in the evening for East Coast, late afternoon for the West Coast. Moon at 15 degrees, or moon at 16 rather, trine Saturn at 16 and a half. So that's the main aspect for the day, which can generally keep things more stable emotionally in circumstances, but they're still deep and intense in that Scorpio phase, but just more mature, most likely in that moment for a few hours there. And then the last aspect is the moon in conjunct to Chiron from Scorpio to Aries. But that's pretty late on Wednesday night. So that's a little bit of an emotional issue with this Chiron, how we feel about the self and confidence stuff. But again, that's like a really super minor aspect that I'm not too concerned about at all. and it moves through there pretty quickly. And now we get to this big day with a lot of easy aspects. There is opposition here on Thursday, January 23. But overall, again, I think this might be one of the best days to be getting stuff done and making progress and having support in general, because we start things off with the moon trine and exalted Venus, which helps the feelings and the mood to be more pleasurable, to be more enjoyable, more cooperation with other people. But it's still a very private aspect because Scorpio is very private and Pisces is all this stuff going on behind the scenes. So it's not so much visible, but it's behind the scenes. Things are flowing pretty nicely on Thursday overall, in a sense of feeling more satisfied with what's happening. Now, this is super early, as always, but so it's not going to last the whole day with that moon Venus. But the moon is still in good aspect with a lot of stuff here. Even this mystic rectangle that pops up with the moon, Mercury, Uranus, and Mars on Thursday here. So this is great because the moon is connecting in a nice way with Mercury. So the way we're feeling and the mood and the circumstances, it's on board with this more mature Capricorn side of business and work and responsibility and plans. So the way we're communicating and thinking and feeling, generally speaking, is more flowing and more supportive of how we're feeling on Thursday. So Thursday, even though there's opposition between Mercury and Mars, I think it's still a great day to be publishing or anything material, buying and selling, publishing, writing, taking care of networking, emails, messages, anything like that. I think this is a great time for it, even though the moon is debilitated in this position, being ruled by this Mars still. There's still a little bit of this edginess in the background, but because Mars has outlets, I think that it's going to be okay. There's still a little bit of something potentially critical just because of Mercury coming into this opposition with Mars, but because Mercury also has that trine down to Uranus and Mars has that sextile to Uranus, and the moon is opposing Uranus. Uranus is the key player here. And what does that mean? That means if we're willing to step outside the box, be innovative and creative and try new things, especially with immigration stuff, home and family stuff, property, real estate, money, resources, investments, business, plans, goals, all these things are in great alignment when you think outside the box. Look at something differently. The way we're perceiving things has this opening to be more positive when we do look at things differently and act differently. So if you're willing to take the initiative and try something, even action should have good results with that connection from both Venus and Uranus and everything else going on. But at the same time, the mind is going to get really stimulated with this Mercury opposition to Mars. Normally, if this was only a Mercury opposite Mars aspect, it would be a very different interpretation. We would have some issues. We'd have some fighting words and some issues going on here on Thursday. And there's still a little bit of tension, but again, because there's so many other easier aspects, there's outlets to take off the tension. There's not going to be there's ways to work with this, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not as negative opposition in my opinion. But with the moon and Uranus, there could still be some unpredictability, some surprises, some changes going on here on Thursday morning right off the bat, because this is super early, right when this is happening, first thing. The market will be affected, though, because it's right as the market is opening. But it should probably be a really interesting day in the market on Thursday. And again, the Mars sextile Uranus gives us a great outlet to be taking action with home and family property. If you have any big projects, construction jobs, anything like that, this is one of the better days to be working with it all, or making any kind of progress on the home front and on the mundane level, the homeland. This is going to be a major day for news about the USA and immigration stuff that's taking place probably on this day, but all week long for sure and months into the future. But on this day, I bet there's something significant. All right, and the moon here goes through that aspect, and then the moon starts to align for the rest of the day with Neptune, the nodes of fate, before it changes signs at the end of Scorpio. So even as the day goes on Thursday, the moon trine Neptune shows an outlet for people to escape into their own world as well, dreams and imagination and fantasy. It's just a lot easier in this moment for people compared to today on the second half of Tuesday. It also just increases imagination and intuition and feelings. And overall, I'm just liking it. I like Thursday. There's a slight chance that something could happen negative on Thursday, but I feel like there's a more opportunity for the positives. So I really hope that's how it plays out. But we are going to see this moon change signs, leave Scorpio, its debilitation, after it aligns with the nodes of fate. So it's a fateful day too on late Thursday night, right before we have this change and the moon ingresses Sagittarius. So just whatever happens, if there is anything that happens on Thursday, it's fateful and connecting to the long-term future here. So this is the final aspect for Thursday, change of mood and circumstances now that the moon is in Sagittarius, no longer being ruled by Mars. Now the mood and the circumstances are being ruled by the Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is going to be stationing direct eventually here at 11 degrees, so it's kind of slowing down here. So now that the moon is in Gemini, it puts more emphasis on the Gemini Sagittarius axis, which is the learning, teaching axis, the traveling axis, information, data, networking, more outward, more busy, more adventurous. Generally, as I've said over and over, every time the moon comes into Sagittarius out of Scorpio, it's generally for the positive because it leaves its debilitation and enters a fire sign ruled by Jupiter, more uplifting vibes. Sometimes when the moon comes into Sag, if there's a critical day or if it's other things are super critical, then it can just overinflate what's already going on, But generally it's a more positive feeling for people. However, Sagittarius is at odds with all the Pisces, so eventually that moon will be squaring all those Pisces transits. But in the very beginning here, it's not all that bad because the moon comes into Sagittarius and forms a sextile with the Pluto and the sun. So now people are a little more comfortable with this power dynamic, and it's not as edgy or intense usually in this moment. More uplifting, more positive. Culture issues come out more. Again, politics, group and community is the main focus with the sun in Aquarius. Science and technology is a huge part of the focus as well, and even the new era for the next 20 years. But because of that sextile, it's more flowing in the beginning of this new phase on Thursday night. And then we get to the following day on Friday, January 24, and that's officially when the moon makes that sextile to the sun in the overnight hours and that sextile to Pluto in the overnight hours. So it's basically midnight on Thursday night into Friday morning here. That more harmony aspect is going on. And then there's only one aspect for the whole day on Friday here, which isn't going to be until 6:45 p.m. on the West Coast. So not until, Friday night. So all day on Friday, really, it just sets the tone of this moon sextile sun, a more cooperative, outward, social dynamic coming into play here. And then that last aspect on Friday night will be the moon in Sag opposing Jupiter. So that's big because the moon in Sagittarius already likes to go big with everything. Indulgences tend to happen here with the moon in Sag. It is more of a lighthearted vibe as well, more a need for a sense of humor and comedian stuff and having a good time and laughing. That's a bigger need for people generally when the moon is in Sagittarius. But as it reaches this opposition with Jupiter, by Friday night, things are big. The mood is big. Things are a little bit over the top, with everything happening here. But it shouldn't be negative necessarily. No, it shouldn't be negative in this moment on Friday night. It's just big. It's just going big with things. So very active, maybe very outward, maybe very social this Friday night for people, generally speaking. So again, not a whole lot going on there on Friday. Sorry, just taking a look at something here. All right. All right, so where am I at? I'm on Friday. So that's all there is on Friday, just the moon in Sagittarius, basically. So pretty good overall, I think, for Friday as well. And then we move this forward into Saturday, January 25. The moon is still in Sagittarius, but then this is where it kind of connects to these more challenging aspects. On Saturday early morning, the moon squares Saturn for the first aspect, so that can change the mood. Mood get a little more serious, a little more heavy, a little more of a pressure that comes in for people early on Saturday morning there. And then the moon forms a trine to Chiron later on in the morning, which can be better for self-confidence and more activity because they're both fire signs and your instincts. But because the moon was square Saturn first thing in the morning, there's still a little bit of a limitation on Saturday compared to Thursday and Friday. And then the moon is squaring Venus as Venus is starting to align with Mars. So that's an interesting dynamic because emotions and the circumstances are at odds with Venus. But Venus has, well, even a minor grand trine here is forming between Venus, Mars, and this Uranus, which is a very positive aspect here on Saturday. But yet, for a little bit here, at first, the moon squaring Venus is just activating something about a situation here of value, but it's still a tension aspect at first here on Saturday evening. That talks about, again, it's a routine aspect, and it's not as bad as normal because of there's outlets. But we also see a finger of God pointing right towards this moon too. So there's a lot of aspects happening all at the same time here on Saturday night. Some difficult and some easy. So the moon square Venus is sometimes just not feeling completely content or satisfied. There's a relationship or financial dynamic in play perhaps on Saturday evening, Saturday night, but it's a little dynamic, it's changeable. And you might not be getting everything in that moment, but then as the moon moves past that, and perhaps there is something fateful with the finger of God, so if you have any personal planet at 23 degrees, let's just say 22 to 23 degrees of Sagittarius, then that finger of God is pointing right towards that, but only for a very quick moment here on Saturday evening. It might not play out as anything, but it's there, and it could show that there's something fateful for you. Again, if you do have a personal planet around 22 to 23 Sagittarius. But if you have a personal planet around 22 to 23 to 24 degrees of Taurus, Pisces, or Cancer, then this more positive minor grand trine between those three planets are supporting your personal planet. So that's a much more of a positive for you if you do have a planet right there, 22 to 24 of Pisces, Taurus, or Cancer. So it's an interesting dynamic playing out. Again, it's stirring up an event or a connection or something happening here on Saturday night, generally speaking. And the moon is in conjunct to that Mars. That's the finger of God and the Uranus part. So we still have to make some adjustments, but what's wrapped around that is the Venus trine Mars. So this is the relationship dynamic that's also perfecting here on Saturday night between the lovers, feminine, masculine unity and cooperation and connection, especially emotionally and feelings based. And then Uranus is a twist of some kind that's connected to the lovers and relationships. Something different, something unusual is available, Or you could even use this within a relationship if you're willing to step outside the box when it comes to your relationship activity as well. Trying something new in a relationship, doing something different in your relationship that could have better results than the past. So even when it comes to money stuff, looking at your money, looking at property, home, and family stuff, so financial, property, home, and relationship, again, be willing to step outside the box and try new things, and you could have really good results. I'm thinking that overall, this could be a good financial dynamic to be purchasing something as well. Okay, and that's pretty much the tone for the rest of Saturday night. Overall, I'm thinking that there could be, it's not going to be the best. I think Friday night maybe could be feeling a little easier or more fun or just more enjoyable than Saturday night, but I don't think it's terrible. I think Saturday night the mood is more outward, more detached, fun, but the preferences are deeper. The preferences are more behind the scenes and inward and home and kind of your more private life. That's where there's more flowing things happening. So some of the preference, I think, in general is going to be people want to be in their own space, but yet connected to other people. But there might be a social thing here that's adding some tension on Saturday night, but I don't think it's terrible. So that's what I'm seeing. So that's an interesting day as well. But even more interesting will be the Sunday night with this Mercury. All right, so moving this forward, we get to Sunday on January 26th, and the moon is at the end of Sagittarius and making squares to Neptune and the nodes of fate before it changes signs. And luckily, this is all overnight hours, super early on Sunday morning. So by the time most people are getting up on Sunday morning, the moon has already passed these squares and is in Capricorn. But if you are up really early, with the moon T-squared the nodes of fate, it's a fateful day on early Sunday morning for the world. The world is at a crossroads. And also, this could be something about storm here. Again, a big storm that's fateful, a fateful storm this time in some way. Perhaps this is almost a week away, so I don't know, the weather or anything, but I'm usually, when the moon is squaring Neptune, there's something going on. Plus, now that north node is coming into Pisces, pointing towards that Neptune, there's going to be some new storms in the months ahead. But the moon could just be picking up on that, or just a little bit of confusion or sensitivity, unsure, kind of having to go with the flow. There could be distractions first thing in the morning. But again, by the time most people get up, it's already done. And that's what will happen. The moon will ingress Capricorn for a change of mood and circumstances for the next 2.5 days. So the moon in Capricorn, now the circumstances and the mood is ruled by Saturn behind the scenes, coming back to this more serious vibe. And even the sun in Aquarius being ruled by that Saturn in Pisces. So now both the lights are on board with that again. But the moon is also entering the dark moon phase and will be closing out this last cycle in Capricorn before we get to that new moon in Aquarius for next week. But as the moon comes into Capricorn, again, it's people's emotions and feelings are changing. Generally speaking, it's about being more responsible, being more conservative, taking things slower, being more mature, punctual, taking care of business, getting the job done, looking at your plans, and preparing for so much new activity that's ahead for the year. But it really comes back to work, business goals, ambitions. And Mercury's closing out this Capricorn too. So all this Capricorn is going to be closing out, and we're going to be coming into this Aquarius, this futuristic vibe, this new era vibe, politics, science, technology, group and community. It's going to be the big focus more and more by next week. But now for 2.5 days here to wrap up this report week, the moon is in Capricorn. The moon is considered debilitated in Capricorn, which just means it's not generally the most comfortable place, which happens every month. We have this phase where the moon is in Scorpio debilitated, then it goes into Sag for a couple of days, and then it comes into a debilitated Capricorn moon for a couple of days. but it's not the worst thing, especially if other things are okay. And in this case, with the moon in Capricorn, it's now in harmony with all the Pisces transits. But the first part of the day is a little more critical and fateful, like I said. Then the moon comes into Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. Things get more serious, more mature later on Sunday morning for the rest of the day. And then we see that Mercury sextiles Neptune perfectly, as Mercury also aligns with the nodes of fate, and then Venus is sextile perfectly that Uranus. So it's a fateful day on Sunday, a little more critical in the first part of the day, and as time goes on, again, there's something of value here. Mercury finally reaching the end of Capricorn. With that said, the Mercury is getting close to Pluto too. So even next week with Mercury conjunct Pluto, we're still going to have a lot of mental intensity building up, and it's getting closer and closer, but we have outlets to work with it on Sunday here. So Mercury sextile Neptune gives good dreams and fantasies and imagination and creativity in a more practical business plans, goals type of a way, more inspirational. And then Mercury sextile the north node of destiny and trine the south node. So any type of communications that come in for you Sunday or Monday could be fateful information, could change something for you. So information, media, news, any kind of information is very important. That could change something for the future, but it's more flowing. It's not a difficult thing. So I think it's positive overall. And plus the Venus sextile Uranus, again, money, looking at money differently. This could show, well, I'll take a look on Monday here when the market's open. I wish it was Monday that Venus was making this aspect, but it could still be carrying over into Monday as well. But that's where, again, relationships and money have an opening for a change, something that's different, that's not a conflict or anything. So by stepping outside the box with money, with your purchases, with your management of money, doing things differently with relationships, and there is a relationship opportunity here, I feel like, too. And keep in mind that where this Venus is where Venus will be at. It's going to retrograde back to this area, in April. So it's going to be coming back here. So anything going on, with this exalted Venus, it's a really good position. And it's actually making Pisces a lot better in this temporary phase than it otherwise would be. If we didn't have Venus here in Pisces right now, things would suck really, really bad if we just had Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node in Pisces. So even though all this is going to be closing out, or closing out this long era of Pisces, there's still going to be a lot of stuff happening here, but there's something of value developing until the full moon in Libra in April about this area of the chart. So it's much more positive, and it's connecting to something alternative, something different that we have an outlet to work with money and relationship. By doing things differently, that's the main point. So I really like this. It looks pretty decent overall here with these aspects on late Sunday. It's not even late Sunday. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the Venus-Uranus on the West Coast. Mercury-Neptune all day long. And then Mercury and the nodes of fate are really late, 11:21 on the West Coast. So overnight hours, Sunday into Monday morning for the East Coast and Europe, with Mercury aligned with fate, with news and information that could come in, anything that comes in the overnight hours into Monday morning, or even your own thoughts and ideas. It's all fateful if you do have an idea about something. So good day to be working with communications, money, and relationships as well. And then we do get to the following day on Monday, January 27. Moon is still in Capricorn, still the dark moon phase, closing things out, preparing for the new beginning in business and goals, ambitions. And we have the moon in conjunct to the Jupiter again. So adjusting to communication, media, business and work. And then we have the moon sextile Saturn, which is the most one of the easier aspects of the day, of support, maturity, emotional stability for most people, from Pisces to Capricorn. And then we do have the moon squaring that Chiron as the day goes on Monday, again, stirring up some issues. It's like that's right where Mercury is today on Tuesday here. So a week later, the moon gets there and squares that Chiron. And this is like closing out a lot of things that were happening with this Capricorn cycle that we've already dealt with. And so we're closing out, we're preparing. And Mercury is about to change signs. So Mercury all day on Monday is at a critical degree of an ending degree as well before it changes. And then that's what does happen. Mercury ingresses Aquarius. And everything is starting to catch up. But this is going to change the mind and thoughts, and it's going to start getting really intense, and it's all about this power and control dynamic now. So intense communications, but now the mind is more futuristic. Now the mind is thinking alternatively, not as conservatively as Capricorn, Mercury. Now it's more objective, it's more intellectual. It's looking at, again, science and technology and transformation, mental stimulation and mental transformation is going to start coming in strong for next week's report with this. So the way people are thinking and processing is changing basically. And Aquarius is, again, it's about being different, about looking at things differently, seeing things differently, perceiving the world differently. Has more of a quirk to it, and it has a little more of a rebellious tone to it too. Like moving away from that Capricorn, all those years of Pluto and Capricorn, the established order of things, the establishment. Now this is a new revolutionary transformative phase that we're about to start next week with the Aquarius new moon. But we're not quite there yet. We still have this closing out of the other cycle. And now that Mercury's still being ruled by the Saturn in Aquarius as well. But it all comes back to behind the scenes developments that we're working on in the world for the next few months. A lot of behind the scenes things are happening that we're not just seeing clearly, for the world. We'll see more and more as we get to later in the spring, and even more so by the summer. We'll really see a new world shaping. All right, and the moon is opposite Mars, but trine Uranus. So it's going to stir up a lot of activity, strong emotions and feelings, but it gives an outlet, again, to this Uranus. Uranus is the saving grace for this week. When people are willing to step outside the box, be innovative and creative, and try new things. That's the secret to success this week, is not just doing the same old, same old. So there's strong emotions and feelings by Monday night, but again, an outlet to relieve that tension by the moon trine Uranus. And that is the main aspects for the week ahead here. Let me take a look at Tuesday before I wrap this up. So Tuesday on January 28th will be next week's report, and the moon will be connecting to Venus, Neptune, and the nodes of fate in the overnight, our early morning hours, and then we'll ingress Aquarius on Tuesday. In the afternoon, meet up with that Mercury, as Mercury and Pluto and the moon are all together. It's going to be a pretty intense day on Tuesday as well. That leads to the Aquarius new moon by technically Wednesday. So Tuesday will be the last dark moon before the new moon. But it's all about Aquarius next Tuesday and Wednesday. It's all about that Pluto, very intense and powerful in transformation. So that's the theme for this whole week ahead, is power, control, and transformation is what's happening in the world, and maybe in your own life if it aligns with you as well. All right, so that's what I have for you this week, folks. I hope that's helpful, and I appreciate you watching. Take good care.